Welcome everyone. Today we have updated Marksman guide. As you can see behind me, we'll be testing our Marksman with over 2000 corruption in variety of builds. And before I show you guys the build, you can see that I'm currently sitting on pretty high warding. Now you can't see exactly how much warding I'm sitting on, but I'm actually sitting on close to 16,000 warding. So this is actually a new adjustment of the warding build, and you might be thinking, hey man, wouldn't this be super expensive and wouldn't this be super hard to achieve? But surprisingly, my goal for this set of videos and also updates is to make the build cheaper and also more accessible for players. So what you're looking at is actually a cheaper version of the warding build, and this will require you to only have 2 or 1 legendary potential items and using more exalted items, which can be crafted, tailor adjusted to your build if you're lacking resistance or if you're lacking damage. Now looking at the demonstrations, I have decided to clear the entire dungeon because I keep missing the objective monsters. But you can see our build is quite durable, it still deals tons of damage, and the best part about this is this build is considered much cheaper than the previous build. Now I know you guys might be thinking, hey man, how come you're using the warding set, not HP set? We are working on adjusting the build one at a time. So the first focus is to update the warding set for a cheaper setup and also stronger setup. And you can see this can clear 2000 corruption without a problem. The next upcoming guide will focus on the Marksman using the health setup and giving you guys a cheaper setup for the HP setup. Because a lot of players are saying that the build are getting super costly even for the 2 LP or 3 LP items, so we're trying to make the build cheaper, accessible, while strong enough to take down any content with over 2000 corruption. So now coming over to the boss as a demonstration of the damage for this build. We're picking over the Abomination just because we happen to be testing on this boss, and you can see that during the testing replays, I have to clear the 4 corners. So I decided to attach this part in the replays as well, so you guys can have a better summary. Now because the build is cheaper, it will be sacrificing some damage. But surprisingly guys, let's have a look at the damage against a 2000 corruption boss. And we took it down within 7 seconds. Yes, this particular change of setup basically reduced maybe 10% of the damage, but we still deal tons of damage against a single target, and this is never a problem for the build. Now you might be wondering, man, what is the new setup? So in the replays before the fights, I will be demonstrating the new setup to you guys. You can see that I have taken down the unique and also legendary rings, which can be costly to find, and I have decided to chew down some of the legendary potentials. Now the idols can be adjusted should you miss any of the resistance, and you can see at the fight I'm sitting on about 70% all resist capped with close to 600 cold resistance. And as for the stationary warding, we're sitting on 17,000 stationary warding. So this build is much more durable and should be cheaper for you guys to plan and also to be crafting this build if you're using the warding set. Now if you come over to the build planners, you can see there are several versions of the build. The version I'm currently using does have a 3 legendary potential weapon. I then know that yes guys, the daggers are very expensive for 3 LP. The build works perfectly with a 2 LP weapon. So you don't have to spend over 100 million for 3 LP weapons, which I'll explain on the second part. Now compared to the previous build, this build definitely does not need all the 4 legendary potentials. If you're trying to use the build in its basic form, just 1 legendary potential can do if you get lucky with a crucial crafting. Now 2 legendary potential is preferable, and this is how we were able to test clear over 2000 corruption over there. Now you guys might be wondering, hey Matt, what about the old setup? How does this fare in the higher level dungeons? So here we have crafted the older setup as well, and you can see the older setup with some min and max gears sitting over 13,000 warding, with slightly less HP, and you can see the gears as well. The daggers are not crafted perfectly simply because we don't need the lifesteal. And as you can see over here, most of the items are 2 to 3 legendary potential. This is the old setup that was recommended to us, that was recommended by us to you guys when we first started the warding set for the Marksman. Now to keep in mind guys, we are testing those setups on offline characters, because currently after multiple videos and also after Rex's video, the inflation of the price is ridiculous, and this is the goal of making this particular guide, so it is cheaper for you guys to be using a cheaper setup. Now if you do want to have a look, the older setup does tons of damage. It is quite speedy, and yes, with high with higher legendary potentials, you can deal tons of damage. The downside of the older setup is you're doing way much more overcapping damage than you needed. And what that means is you're overkilling the monsters while reducing your survivability. And this is the reason to have the new setup. So if you guys want to see the replays of comparison at the end of the videos, you can see our old setup mow through the map super fast. But the downside is sometimes you even die to ground effects like this. Now while testing, my friend was standing on the poison and they killed him. Yes, you can see that the particular setup is susceptible to a lot of the ground effects, and this is why the more defensive warding setup that I provided to you guys in the builder's guide will give us more survivability. So let's come over to the fights using the old setup, and you can see the slight adjustment to higher damage. So fighting over the boss, you can see the previous setup with more damage using higher legendary potential items, which cost hundreds and also hundreds millions more gold. It actually took down the boss in 6 seconds. Yes, I made a comparison replay. So the old previous setup with more costly setup took down the boss in 6 seconds. And in comparison guys, the new cheaper setup will take the boss down in 7 seconds. Yes, the damage loss is not going to be dramatic. And yes, on the second part of the video, I'll talk about potential ways to reduce the lag. I had a lot of questions on that, and there's a lot of small tips I'm going to share with you guys. So coming over to the builder's guide, you can see there are several versions of the crafted Marksman build, and if you have a look at this video, I actually had one setup for each stage of the game. But what a lot of viewers are saying is the setup is too expensive, it's unachievable, and also not practical to list all of those legendary items into full potentials. So if you remember the previous video, we do have a video to teach you which of the best legendary potentials you should be crafting depending on the priorities. But in this video, I want to introduce you guys to this new setup for the warding set. Now if we briefly go through the items, we're using the daggers, the chest, the boots, the gloves, and also the helmet, and together with the relic. What has changed will be the rings, the belt, and also the amulet. So this particular setup actually gives us more choices of affixes and also stats. We can even seal affixes should you be missing resistance. Now for the case that you can't craft affixes like those, you can remove some of the idols to balance out your resistance to all 75%. So the biggest change compared to the previous build is that we're no longer stacking the doom damage with a belt and also a ring, which will give us over 20% bonus damage multiplier. And similarly, we're trying to not stack on this Oceanian ring, which can be very costly even though it gives percentage damage increase per stack of shock, which is incredibly powerful but yet very expensive to get even to 2 legendary potential. And finally, we're not trying to heal using potions, and this particular amulet does not provide us additional stats compared to what other amulets does. So here are the adjustments. We'll be using the base of Ivory Wings, which will provide us narcotic resistance, warding decay threshold, and also ability to craft multiple affixes like lightning damage, mana regen, cold resistance, and also elemental resistance. And any resistance we're missing, we can be crafting onto those rings. As for the amulet, we'll be going with the implicit that reduces damage over time, and this is one of the biggest source of damage that can kill us in the later stage over 1500 or 2000 corruptions. And the ability to craft those exalted items means that we can be using tier 5, tier 6 items, and this will still work guys. Ideally you want tier 7 penetration, but even if you get a tier 5 or tier 6, this can also work. And finally guys, we can be using experimental builds that give us tons of armor with implicit, while gaining mana while using potions, lightning damage, increased health, more health, and even craft this one with higher cold resistance. So yes, the ability to focus on crafting exalted items for the trinkets will be the big game changer. And as you guys can see in the replays, the defensive capacity for this set means we have 2900 or even higher HP and over 17,000 warding. And this will definitely be more survivable compared to the previous build, which deals way more damage and it takes down the boss in 6 seconds. But with the variation of the setup, you can take down the boss within 7 or 8 seconds, so the damage loss is not going to be major. Now I know a lot of you may be thinking, hey Matt, I can't get the 3 LP weapon, and here we have a tuned down version which can take you over 1000 corruption or even 1500 corruption. So the daggers are made to 2 LP over here, and yes, you don't need armor shredding or lifesteal on the daggers. And over here, we'll be having armor shredding crafted on the amulet. And this doesn't have to be a tier 5. If you can seal a tier 1 or tier 2 armor shredding effect, that is enough for the build. Now just to show you guys what I mean by enough armor shredding, if you look at the debuff on the boss, look at the debuffs over here. We're stacking over 200-300 armor shredding and also additional effects, and this means the incremental damage we're building up just having one item that provides us with armor shredding effect will be massive. Because we're proccing so many traps, so many triggers of detonating arrow, the armor shredding effect really stacks up. And by my friend's estimations, after 200 or 300 stacks of armor shredding, the further armor shredding will only reduce the boss's defense by 1% after 50 or 100 more shredding stacks. So having the armor shredding effect not on the weapon is definitely fine. Now of course guys, if you have the armor shredding effect on the weapon, that is fine as well. Because the build does tons of damage, as long as you have critical strike multipliers, lightning damage or flat landing damage, that is fine as well. So the build does not need 3 LP weapons, which can be very costly currently in the market. Now if you look at the tuned down version, all the gears are set to 2 legendary potentials, and some of the expensive gears are set to 1 legendary potential. And this should help you guys change into a cheaper build if you're currently looking into play the Marksman to go for 1000, 1500 corruption, and while looking forward to transition into the next setup. And as I mentioned previously guys, if you're looking to change the idols, you can feel free to do so. Because the setup wants you to be crafting some exalted items, if you can't get those stats, you can be finding resistance and also health on the idols, and you can be changing this around. Now in terms of the blessings, we're still going with critical strike multipliers, all resistance, armor, and also cold resistance, together with lightning damage. Now I have had a few questions and also some testings on whether lightning damage or lightning shredding. So in this regards, chance to shred lightning resistance is not bad as well. But as you can see in the replays against the boss with over 2000 corruption, we don't really have a problem dealing damage to the boss. And most of the time, your major issue, so you can see the replays, we don't have a problem with 2000 corruption boss. Most of the time, our major issue is against monsters, because we want to kill them fast. Having higher damage will allow you to have higher initial damage, which can mow down groups of enemies. While having lightning shredding effects means you can take down single target more as you stack those debuffs. So after some testing and also discussion, we have decided to go with increased lightning damage so you can take down small monsters fast. Because this build does not have trouble with bosses, with the excessive amount of armor shredding effects we're applying to the boss, it dies super fast. But of course guys, if you're already having the lightning shredding effect, that is fine as well, because you will be doing higher damage against a single target. Now briefly going through the skills. There's not a major change with the skills, and we have kept most of the skills. Again guys, if you want to do more AoE damage, you can unperk this one and come over to this one. But we just want a little bit damage multipliers and also critical chances. Most of the skills are similar to the past, and here if you guys remember, we're going with increased dark shot and also increased spreading of the smoke bomb. You can go for these value points over here, but this will mean you remove some radius over here and also some frequency over here. We are getting the elusive perk, and this is actually really good, as you're gonna see in the replays. After dashing, for the next seconds, you pretty much have a lot of dodge, and this will reduce the damage you take against multiple enemies. And finally for the shurikens, it is pretty much the same. You'll be gaining increased armor, increased durations, and the shuriken will deal lightning damage while giving you shock chances against them. Now in terms of the passives, we haven't changed too much, and we have decided to not go with dexterity over here, just so we can get some additional resistance and also dodge rating, because the build does not lack damage. The build really wants to be more defensive, and this is the reason behind this new setup, and also to make the build more cheaper and also accessible. Now I don't think I need to explain the skill rotations too much. As long as you guys are mobile and also constantly moving, you should be dealing tons of damage as you throw your traps. As long as you're managing your mana, you should be fine, and most of the time, it's hard to spend on your mana because things die so fast. One thing to notice is that for this build, because we are low on health, you want to be dashing as fast as you can, so this will regenerate more mana to keep yourself up with higher mana and also dealing more damage. Now before I finish the video, some of the viewers have recommended to try to remove the damage displays to reduce the lag for this build. and other viewers have said to try streamer mode for this particular setup, so that can reduce the lag. I have tested out this using without damage numbers. Now some parts this looks okay, some other parts this still looks a little laggy. So it is really a personal choice, guys. I like to see the numbers and I don't mind a little bit lag. But if you find the lag too much, you can take away the damage numbers. And this could potentially help you guys to reduce some lags coming from the build dealing too much damage and also too many instances. Now at the same time, guys, I have turned off Scream Shake and also Scream Shake intensity. Together with lowering my graphics, I'm trying to reduce the lag as much as I can. And also, guys, you can go for streamer mode and this might help you with your lags as well. So what I do now is I'll provide you guys with this testing replay so you can see the comparison of the new setup compared to the previous warding setup. And you can see the damage numbers and also you can see how fast we run through bosses. Now if you guys find my videos and also guides helpful and also want to support my passion in making more guides and also more videos for the last Epoch and also more games to come like Path of Exile, please consider joining me on Patreon, and also here I have created my Ko-Fi page. You can also support me directly through donations, but supporting me continuously with one of those memberships will mean a lot for my future updated videos and to become financially sustainable so I can be continuing making videos for you guys and doing what I love the most, and that is to share and also teach our communities as I dive into different games and making more guides for you guys. And as you guys are going to see in the future, I'll have different ranks and also perk advantages and also special events and also special features for members like account reviews, perfecting the build for you guys, and also co-op time play, and also even special future videos for you guys on your special build for different members.
Not happening. Not happening. It won't forget. Not happening. Not happening.